Hi everyone, let's do some printing. Today we will be focusing on lowercase s and also lowercase z. Both of these letters fit between the dotted line and the bottom line. We'll start with lowercase s. Before we do though, do you remember when we printed a lowercase c? This will come in handy when we print a lowercase s, because the first part of a lowercase s is just like the C, and in fact, the curve is the same too. We'll just need to squish it up closer to the dotted line. I'm going to leave the lowercase c here just so we can compare how they're similar. Put a starting dot that is just underneath the dotted line. Compare. It's the same place where we started a lowercase c from. And now begin by doing a backwards rainbow. So far, we've started the exact same way as when we did a lowercase c. Now here comes the difference. Instead of curving all the way down to the bottom line, you will need to squish the curve up like this. Curve. In fact, this looks just like a lowercase c, except it's flying off the ground. When you make a lowercase s, you're starting by making a lowercase c that is flying off of the ground line. This is where it gets different again. We're going to put our pen back where it left off, and we're going to curve the other way. You will notice that the lowercase s sits on the bottom line. Compare. It's really a lowercase c with that added extension on the bottom. Let's try another lowercase s. I'll leave the C here just so you can compare again. Put a starting dot that is underneath the dotted line. Now do a backwards rainbow. Curve. Make sure your curve is flying though. Do you see how my curve does not touch the bottom line? We've made a flying lowercase c. Now it's time to curve the other way. Curve the other way. And when you curve the other way, you should be sitting on the bottom line. Let's try it again, but this time we're not going to pick up our pen at all. Start below the dotted line, backwards rainbow, curve, make your C fly, and now curve the other way. And there we have it, a lowercase s. You don't need to lift up your marker when you make a lowercase s. Let's do another one. Start below the dotted line, backwards rainbow, curve so that your C flies. Now curve the other way. You'll notice my S is balanced. The top curve and the bottom curve are of similar size. Let's make another one. Start below the dotted line, backwards rainbow, curve. Now curve the other way. Just like that. And again, start below the dotted line, backwards rainbow, curve, curve the other way. There we have some lowercase s's. Let's erase our strip and see if you can catch the mistakes with the following lowercase s's. Spot what's wrong with this one. Can you find the problem? Hopefully you noticed that I started too low. In fact, where I started is actually touching the curve of the S. That means when I start my S, I need to be closer to the dotted line, so this does not happen. Backwards rainbow, curve, curve the other way. This time where I started is not touching the curve of the S. This one is much better. Be careful you don't start down too low. You need to be closer to the dotted line. Find the mistake with this lowercase s. This lowercase s is too heavy on the top. I started exactly on the dotted line instead of just underneath it, which meant my rainbow was much too flat at the top. I need a nice arced rainbow. And then I need to start curving sooner. so that both of my curves will be balanced. In this one, I went down too far when I did my first curve. That's why the head of the S looks too big. Try and make sure you have half of one curve close to the dotted line and half of the other curve close to the bottom line so that they're balanced. Find the mistake with this lowercase s. Can you find what's wrong? I didn't get much of a backwards rainbow in. I started on the dotted line instead of just underneath it. Make sure you start under the dotted line so you can have a nice arc to your rainbow. That's much better. Let's try lowercase z. When you print a lowercase z, you are allowed to start right on the dotted line. Different than an S where we were underneath it by a bit. Anyways, go to the dotted line and then move your pen forward, just like that. And remember, we call this forward because it is the direction we read a book. Once you've gone forward, it's time to do a backwards slide. Think about being at the playground. Slides, they're not straight up and down, they're on angles. Our slide in the Z is a backward slide, so we will go the direction we do not read a book, and it will be on an angle, like this. Backwards slide. The last step in a lowercase z is to once more go forward, but this time on the bottom line. Like that. Do you see how the beginning of the Z and the bottom of the Z match up with the dotted line and the bottom line? That's what you should aim to do. Finger space, go to the dotted line, forwards, backwards slide, and forwards again. There's another lowercase z. 2 finger spaces, go to the dotted line, forwards, backwards slide, and forwards again. 2 finger spaces, go to the dotted line, forwards, backwards slide, and forwards again. 2 finger spaces, forwards, backwards slide, and forwards. 2 finger spaces, go to the dotted line, forwards, backwards slide, and forwards again. The Z is different than the S. There are no rainbows, only straight lines and slides. See if you can find the mistakes with the following lowercase z's. Remember, sometimes you'll hear it called Z. Find the mistake with this lowercase z. Hopefully you can tell that this lowercase z is too wide. Let's try and make it a bit more narrow. That's much better. Don't let your lowercase z become too wide. See if you can find the problem with this lowercase z. This lowercase z looks too much like a number 2. It's got a curve. Lowercase z does not have curves, only straight lines. Make sure when you're moving forward on the dotted line, it's straight. And then when you move to slide back, that also must be straight. And forwards again. Do you see the difference? Straight lines versus curved lines. That's how you can tell a 2 from a Z. Now we're going to make a pattern with lowercase s and lowercase z. Our pattern will alternate. S, Z, S, Z, S, Z. Let's begin with an S. Remember to start underneath the dotted line so you will have space for your backwards rainbow. Backwards rainbow, curve, curve the other way. Make sure your S is sitting on the red bottom line. Be sure that where you started it is not touching the curve. 2 finger spaces, let's do a lowercase z. Go to the dotted line, forwards, slide backwards, forwards again. Check to make sure you don't have any curves in your Z. 2 finger spaces. Time to do an S. Go below the dotted line. Backwards rainbow. Curve. Curve the other way. 2 finger spaces. Let's make a Z. Go to the dotted line. Forwards. Slide backwards. Forwards again. You can really tell the difference with the S and the Z by noticing the S has no straight lines, only curved lines, and the Z is the opposite. 2 finger spaces, lowercase s, start below the dotted line, backwards rainbow, curve, curve the other way. 2 finger spaces, lowercase z, go to the dotted line, forwards, slide backwards, and forwards again. Try making your own pattern with lowercase s and lowercase z. See you next time.